I guess we can start listening to some sound effects now. First one would be film, synchro, spin, sprocket, whir.
I know the sound. That's a 35 millimeter synchronizer, 4-gang synchronizer. They had a brake on them. It was a little lever that you'd pull down, it would lock the synchronizer in that spot. And there's gears around the little teeth around the perimeter of the gear of the hub. And if you just activate the brake just a little bit and then spin it, it makes that sound. Release the brake and spin it, it's just smooth, effortless bearings or, running through bearings. It's very smooth.
When you hear it now, I mean, what do you think like it would be useful for?
Any kind of a geared object, a finely geared object, spinning. I think we recorded it not only slowing down and speeding up, but as steady as we could make it spin. So it's, you hear the very tiny little teeth of the geared synchronizer, of the geared hub of the synchronizer. So it could work at a slower rate, it could work as a safe tumblers, perhaps. Turning a dial that's geared, that's got detents in it and it's geared. So that was probably sort of a thing like I've got to get that sound before those things can't be found anymore.
So I'm just going to play this for you and you tell me what you think.
All right. Okay. I think that might be the weed whacker with something on it. What is it?
It's dry ice on metal. Just like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, dry ice and metal does some very interesting things. It can make that chattering sound. You can make it scream, or you can make it get these real high-pitched wails by dragging the dry ice across a piece of metal. But it does tend to, because it's so cold, it does tend to vibrate on a warmer metal object, and it just seems to be always interacting with its environment, because I think it's like 250 degrees below zero, so it's really cold, and it's evaporates pretty fast. With dry ice, it's one of those things that's really hard to predict sometimes what you get from it. So you just have to sit down with a bunch of objects and a bunch of dry ice and start to manipulate it. And I mean, that does sound like kind of a boiling, bubbling kind of quality to it. Could be for something like that, or and I haven't actually recorded dry ice in years. I think we kind of got to the limits of what you could do with dry ice years and years ago, because it was a pretty early trick. It was one of the first sound design-y tricks I learned from somebody when I started, that, dry ice makes some weird sounds.
So, okay, we'll switch to creature.
Either monkey or a bird. Oh, the bat, yes. Well, obviously, there's some bats in Batman, and we wanted to get really good bat sounds. A lot of bat sounds are very high pitch, almost above human audible range, above my audible range anyway. But we wanted, more aggressive bat sounds. So, angrier, more active, more frenetic. So, we had to find larger bats. We went to the San Diego Zoo. There's a couple of caves in Texas we visited to get, because they're very predictable to come out at the same time every day and by the thousands, but it's just kind of a slow trickle. It'll begin with a slow trickle and then it'll build up to just a mass of everybody's leaving the cave at the same time. So that kind of has that frenetic quality of just, bats all around you and they're all pissed off and scary. And
what else could it be useful for?
Could definitely be for like a prehistoric kind of animal or an imaginary animal, animated animal of some sort.
Could use it for creature design.
Definitely use it for creature design, yeah. I've managed to make relationships with sound recordists and sound editors around the world, so that's been really helpful when I can't send somebody somewhere to record something to another country, Morocco and in Paris, and I know a bunch of people in London and Scandinavia, Denmark, and Sweden, Australia. So I can just ask, hire them for a day to record stuff, and that's going to give you way more believable information than a Waller group would or anything like that, because you get the whole world and you get all the locations of that world, interiors, exteriors, traffic, people talking, wildlife if there's any, and just the peculiar things that one wouldn't think to put in that are actually in these worlds, And often they sound very very particular to the location. Paris has a lot of scooters, and the traffic even sounds different. So to me, that's like the base thing to do, is to get the proper backgrounds happening and put you in the location, and then add on top of that, add what you need to add or want to add. But it's good to have that really solid, realistic base layer, and a lot of details in those base layers that can be accentuated or pulled out or made more specific to the scene that you're working on. Bubbling?
It's a cappuccino maker.
I don't know what to say about that. It's a cappuccino maker. I suppose you could use it for something else, but a lot of times I just record stuff because it's an interesting sound, and I think I'll be able to use it someday. It's as simple as that, And the milk steamer and cappuccino machines just has that really characteristic, intense bubbling, steamy sound, which can be good for air releases or for any kind of air releases in some kind of viscous fluid or chemical reaction would be good for. But that was probably just something that I heard and went, oh, that's good. I'll get that.
This to me is interesting because I love sounds like this. I love chunky mechanical sounds. It's buttons on a plane panel. Cockpit.
Yeah. So often these old, vehicles or aircraft have buttons, switches, knobs with interesting characteristics to them, and you get the panel resonance, the panel the switches are mounted on, the resonance of the space you're in. So that's an airplane, something from an airplane cockpit, and so you have the resonance of the panel in front of the pilots, and it has a very definite indent sound, it's a definitive switch. It sounds a little old tech, which most planes actually are full of old tech stuff. Mechanical switches, mechanical knobs, and from that switch could be built a whole world of sounds that result from it. If you didn't want to use it simply as a button in an airplane, you could have that button activate something else, which causes another thing to spin, or it could kind of be the initial sound of almost anything, sort of semi-low tech or steampunk kind of vibe that becomes another more involved sound, or it could just be an old-fashioned switch in an airplane We did all the different switches of the planes, and they all have different characteristics, different toggle switches and button push switches, and there's so many kinds of switches. And we've gone to great lengths to record as many as we define and record as many as we can find.